The showbiz suit and sunglasses were gone. Today, Huw Edwards was prepared for the possibility of going to prison, bringing a suitcase with him. This was Edwards after he'd been caught for receiving more than 40 photos and videos of children being abused, sent to him by student Alex Williams. He first contacted Huw Edwards on Instagram. He started sharing explicit adult content, then images of children. Asked if he wanted to see someone young, Edwards replied, "Go on." The court heard Huw Edwards would send the paedophile hundreds of pounds in cash and gifts as an apparent thank you. Edwards claims a neurological disorder means he has no memory of viewing the images. But the judge told him he'd perpetuated the abuse of children. Despite that, he said prison wouldn't address the causes of his offending.
So, Huw Edwards avoids jail, the judge giving him credit for pleading guilty, and he said he accepted his remorse was genuine. He said Huw Edwards does not pose a risk now to the public or children, and that given the crimes he's committed, he would be extremely vulnerable in prison. But he did order Huw Edwards to complete a sex offenders treatment programme and told him your reputation is in tatters.
The NSPCC says offenders like Edwards are fueling record levels of online child abuse.
I think the sentence today is broadly what we would have expected, but this crime is unfortunately impacting far too many children. Last year, the UK police recorded 33,000 child sexual abuse image offences. So we can see this is impacting too many children and families across the UK. We can't allow this to continue to increase. We need to see urgent action, and we need to see everyone playing their part.
Huw Edwards' defence barrister said his client was profoundly sorry, saying he recognises the repugnant nature of such images and the hurt that is done to those who appear in them. For his part in that, he apologises sincerely and makes it clear he has the utmost regret. He recognises he has betrayed the priceless trust and faith of so many people.
Tonight at 10,
Today, the BBC said Huw Edwards betrayed audiences. Millions turned to him in the nation's defining moments.
Buckingham Palace announced the death of Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II.
Behind the calm exterior, there was clinical depression, overuse of alcohol and prescribed drugs. According to a psychiatric report, Edwards described a sense of being inferior, with roots in a difficult relationship with his hypercritical father, compounded when he didn't get into Oxford University, making him feel like an outsider at the BBC. Sexual advances on social media boosted his ego. The BBC knew Huw Edwards had been arrested long before the public did, but kept paying him until he resigned, to the tune of £200,000, which the Director General told a Lords Committee they're trying to claw back.
The BBC's position is clear, the money should be returned, and we've made the request.
Today, the corporation would only say it hasn't set a deadline, but discussions are underway. Meanwhile, Huw Edwards left court. The man once so comfortable in front of a camera, now trying to ignore them, probably to disappear from view in disgrace for fueling the abuse of children.
Well, joining me now is Roger Bolton, a former BBC executive and presenter who launched and presents the Beeb Watch podcast. Clearly, Huw Edwards has behaved appallingly. Has the BBC done anything wrong?
Well, it hasn't behaved appallingly. I don't think it could be expected to know what went on in the mind of Huw Edwards. It's truly shocking. It's appalling. But it's difficult to look into people's souls. So I don't think there's any suggestion that Huw Edwards' family or anybody who worked with him or anybody like that, other than those he was corresponding with, knew about his interest in child sex. So I don't think you can blame him for that. What you can ask is, he started to have real periods of depression, in 2020, there was evidence of alcohol abuse and whatever. Who was looking after him, and who was looking after the staff, because there was some staff in the BBC who felt that he was, if not pursuing them, sending them unwelcome messages. So the offence, BBC couldn't have guessed that was what it was about. There are questions about how it monitors stars like Huw Edwards.
So that's a sort of a safeguarding issue, is it, for staff?
Well, I think there's an industry-wide problem, which is you've got lots of young people on short-term contracts, and they've got to have the confidence if somebody in power, and it's a power issue, starts to make unwelcome, pursues them in an unwelcome manner. They've got to feel that they can appeal to their management without them, paying a price as opposed to the presenter. So I think it's a question for the industry as a whole, where I think on the whole, stars are too powerful and the staff are not powerful enough.
Well, I mean, there's another BBC review into workplace culture.
Yeah,
now.
well, there's always a BBC.
There's always a review, and they're internal. And what is the point of them if they are like? I mean, do you need external monitoring of an organisation like the BBC and other broadcasters?
In the end, what you need is executive producers, commissioning editors, and others to say very clearly to stars that they cannot behave in a certain way, and make sure that the people who work for them, and particularly the least powerful, and I would say particularly women, because it's usually women involved in these circumstances, are empowered to complain and to have their complaints taken seriously. But there is not any suggestion that the BBC is full to the brim of paedophiles or in any way condones the sort of thing that Huw Edwards has been doing is entirely wrong. The other thing which came out in your report, which is deeply disturbing, is this child sex problem is much wider than we thought. And I think we need to make sure we examine that and look at this, because Huw Edwards is not the only person in a prominent position who probably is interested in these sorts of things.
Indeed, and the nature of the images that they said some of them are made, in fact, by the victims.
Well, you see, you've got this confusion. I mean, for example, in Germany, you have the age of consent is 14. Italy is 14. Across the continent, there are different ages of consent. And of course, now with the internet and so on, anybody can almost access anything. That puts a real responsibility on employees to make sure that their most powerful employees are not abusing the system.
But I mean, but can you? I mean, if you say the BBC is not full of these kinds of people, but it's fighting reputational battles on a number of fronts with a number of different presenters from different parts of the BBC, some of which are in court, some aren't.
They are, but it's the biggest British broadcaster, and a lot of the problems relate to independent companies. This is industry-wide. You could quote, we won't, cases in ITV in the past of inappropriate behaviour. There's plenty around, but I think the crucial thing is, do young people can they have the courage, can they have the knowledge that if they complain, things will be dealt with? And I think, presenters, broadcasters have got to say no star is essential. You've got to be able to say to them, okay, if you want to behave like that, or if you want to strut around, whatever, you don't work for us.
Roger Bolton, thank you very much.